Hey guys and girls, I finally got my video together on how to host a .NET website on the Raspberry Pi 4. I did this on both the 8 gig and the 2 gig version, running through it multiple times, making sure that I had all the code that we needed ready to go, and I did put all of that out there on my website so you can follow along with me by going to builditwithdan.com, or I got a link in the description below. If you've not set up Ubuntu already, I do have another video out there. You can go and check it out and follow along there. Again, I got it linked above and I have it in the description. Again, it's worth noting that even though I am using Ubuntu 20.04, everything is set up for the ARM64 architecture, which is what the Raspberry Pi is using. And I'm going to try to go through this real time, not trying to make too many edits to the video, because I do want to show that it can be really easy once you actually find the right code, the right article to walk you through everything. So we're going to step through everything you need to do, from a minimal Ubuntu install to everything to deploying the code and getting the Pi set up so that you can access your website from anywhere on your network. I will also try to get another video out there soon after this one of how to open that up so you can get external traffic to show on the website. But yeah, let's just jump right in. We're going to start out by just connecting to our Raspberry Pi here. So we're just going to type in our address here and connect to Ubuntu. And again, I am kind of using the same Pi from my previous video, so everything up into this point, I'm kind of picking up right where I left off in that last video, and we're going to start going through here. So the first thing that we're going to do is install the .NET runtime and SDK. And again, because we're doing the ARM64 architecture, we do need to do this a little bit differently than simply the install of Apache, or I'm sorry, install of .NET. So I'm just going to clear my screen here, which I will probably do pretty often. But this first code, we're just going to go ahead and download the actual SDK runtime. And you can kind of see here, I'll highlight that's important, is this is for the Linux ARM64 and it is for the .NET SDK 5. All right, that is done. We're now going to make a directory. So basically, so that we can unzip everything. So we made our directory on our home of Ubuntu, and now we're basically going to unzip everything. Now I know I'm going through this kind of fast, but again, I do have all of this code out on my website that you can check out. But once that is done, now we can just kind of verify that we actually have .NET running. So we can navigate into our .NET 64 folder where we unzipped everything and run our .NET and do --info, which will tell us all of the info that we have running. And so we can see our .NET install right here. We have our ASP Core 5 and our .NET 5 as well. So we are good here. So I'm going to clear again. That was the install of our runtime. So we can kind of move on to Apache now. This one's a little bit simpler, as you would expect it to be. We're just going to sudo install Apache 2. That's going to come through and ask if you want to, I don't know, install it, I guess. Go ahead and hit yes. We'll run through everything here. And then as this is going, I'll kind of explain the next thing that we're going to do then is we're going to need to enable some of the Apache settings, such as the rewrite, proxy HTML, headers, and SSL. This will just be used later for when we're trying to proxy pass into our application. So when we go to Chrome, or I guess if you're using IE, we can use our IP address to actually run our website versus trying to run localhost. So once that's done, we're just going to paste that in there. That went really quick. I'm going to scroll back up and just kind of show what we were doing. If I can find it. Oh, where did it go? I saw the enabling. Well, let me see. I'm going to copy that again. So this is what we were running. And that is just a sudo a2e mod, so it's an enable mod, and it's the rewrite proxy HTTP, headers, SSL. And so you can see it when I pasted it in there, it ran it right away, but we can see like these are already enabled because I'm just pasting in there again to kind of show, but it'll go through and enable all of those. And that's all we really need from Apache. At this point, we're going to restart. So we can sudo systemctl restart Apache 2 just to make sure that everything is using it. So I'm going to clear this one more time. The next step that we're going to be running through is the firewall. We do want to enable our firewall, and so we're going to use the UFW, which is uncomplicated firewall, and we're just going to enable that right away. It's going to ask you, do you want to continue? It may disrupt your connection. I've never had it disrupt my connection while I'm connected, so I'm just going to run through and hit yes. The next thing that we can do is we can just kind of see everything that we have right now enabled, or not that it is enabled, but that we can enable. And so we're going to want to enable Apache full, along with some of these other ones. So I'm just going to run through some different codes right here to enable everything that we need. And so it's just going to be sudo UFW allow and then what you're trying to allow. So I'm going to go through it and do the Apache. It'll show that it has allowed it. The next one is the Apache full. You do need quotes around this. If you don't put quotes in there, it will error because of the spacing. So make sure you have quotes around that when you want to allow it. And then the next ones here are for 22. That is to allow FTP and secure FTP, which we're going to use later to deploy some of our .NET code and to allow us to access our Raspberry Pi remotely. The next one is 80 TCP. That is going to allow HTTP. And then the other one is the 443, which is HTTPS, the secured version. So we can see that a lot of these added. The next thing that I'm just going to show is how we successfully did it is you can check the status, and we can see now we have everything enabled. We are good to go. That is enabling the firewall. So we're going to clear that, and now what we're going to do is we're going to actually build our site configuration, and we'll be able to do that by actually building a whole new conf file, and this is basically going to hold our virtual host. This is what's going to allow us to access our site using localhost and our 80 port. So I'm going to build out my conf file, and we're going to want to do that within our sites available folder. So sudo nano, if you don't have nano, you can just do a sudo apt install nano, but it should be installed with Ubuntu by default. And then everything here, if you're following along with me, we can just rename this. This is my Build It with Dan site. This is what I've been trying to get up and running, and just showing you how to do this as well. So we're going to create this file. There is nothing in there right now. I am going to paste this full code in there. If you want to see it from the video, you can pause it. Otherwise, again, it's on my website. So just kind of going through here, the key things is the server name. Again, you want to change it to server alias, and then the document root. We don't have a Build It with Dan folder created yet. We will get to that later, but just wanted to point that out. This will be the main folder where your code is and that it will run off. And then we do have our proxy pass on here. Again, this is how we can pass anything coming through the 80 port. We can pass it to the 127, which is your local host running on port 5000. And then your error logs, generic error log pass there, nothing to change there. So we're going to save it, Control X, Y, Enter, will save. And then we're going to enable. We will enable that thing. So just because we created the file does not mean that Apache is using it. So we do want to enable the site. Again, exactly what you named it. We'll hit Enter. It's going to ask you to take effect, you need to do a reload. So we will go ahead and do that reload or restart. Reload, restart, I don't think it matters here. I have always done a restart. It says reload. I believe they do the same thing. The next that we want to do is Apache already has a default. It is the 000-default config. We just want to disable that. We are going to be using the one that we just created. So we'll disable that. Again, it'll ask you to reload. I'm just going to go up arrow a couple times to that same restart command. And there we go. We should have our virtual host that is working. Now, we don't have anything to run here. So our next step that we're going to do is actually the process of publishing our .NET code. So I'm actually going to back out a little bit here, and we'll hop over to Visual Studio, and I'll just show you there are two changes that we want to make. In our startup, we are going to just add this code. This is not there by default. You might already have it, but we just want to make sure that we are forwarding our headers in our startup in our configure folder. And then the next one, is on our program CS in our create host builder. We are just going to add this use URLs. Now I know that by default it should already have localhost, whether you don't need to specify this, it would use localhost, but this was one of the biggest problems I ran into was it wasn't listening correctly. And so the only way I could find around it at this point was to add this in there with a star for the server. So HTTP star port 5000. And this is what allowed that, IP address to route through and have my application listen correctly. So if there are better ways to do it, please absolutely comment down below. Let me know. I'm not claiming to know everything by any means. So this is just what worked for me. If anyone else is having trouble, maybe this is what's going to work for you as well. So this was our code changes that I just wanted to point out. The next thing that we're going to do here is we're just going to go in and we're just going to publish our web.net. So I'm going to go here and click publish, and that'll open this up. So you'll want to find a location that you want to publish to. So I just have a sandbox, a published folder, and then my actual build it with Dan folder. And then you'll want to just check that your settings are set up here. So because I've been publishing a lot of times, I do have delete existing files true. So it'll just delete all the files within your build with Dan. But then these next three are the important ones. Your configuration, you want to be release. Your framework, you want .NET 5, and your runtime, you want to be portable. Once you have those all set, if they're not the same, you can go ahead and click through here and edit them. But once that's good, then you can go ahead and click your publish, and that'll publish everything out to your specified folder. So the next step then is, now that you have that published, is let's get that over to our Raspberry Pi. And the way that we use that, using FileZilla. Now, if you have not used FileZilla before, this is really just an FTP protocol. It'll just push all of our files over there, but we are going to want to connect to that. So I'm just going to go through and show that in my site managers here. I do have one set up for the YouTube purpose, and that is using our 192.168.1.1. So this is exactly how we connected to our Raspberry Pi with PuTTY. I do want to point out that you do want to select the SFTP, that is the secured FTP. This is what's using port 22. We don't have to specify the port because by default this knows. And then this is going to be the same exact user and password that we used before. So with that, you should be able to connect. Again, same username password that you used when you were in PuTTY connecting to your Pi, and you can connect. And you'll see that, great, we connected, and you can see that we are connected to our home. Now, if we try to navigate right now, down to our / and then we go down to var and we go down to www, we don't have that build it with Dan folder there that we've kind of seen and with our virtual host had set to be our root folder. So let's go back. We're going to create that folder and make sure that our user has access to it. So we're going to hop back to our PuTTY screen here, and I'm just going to kind of clear this out. And so the first thing that we're going to do is we're just going to make that directory first so that we can get our permissions set so that we can FTP stuff over. So sudo make dir, if you're not doing build with Dan, obviously you replace that. Then the next code here is to change the ownership of that folder to be the www data user and group. That will allow us to run the site using the www data. Then we're going to give permissions for everybody to read from the www folder. And then again, the last one here is to add our Ubuntu user, or whatever user that you've been using, to the www group. Great. So with those, now we can hop back to our FileZilla, and you can go in to find your published folder. Went to go to the published folder. So navigating left side is your C drive, the computer that you're on. You can hop into your published, and then on the right side, since I need to go back, I'll step back one, go back into the www. I might just need to refresh here. Now we can see our build it with Dan folder is there. There's nothing in there, so we'll just go back a level, and all we're going to do is take this entire folder, copy it over here, and it'll just run through and start copying all the files. So I'll speed this up here. This does take a second. Great, that's done. So now if we step through, we can see we got everything in here. We have our www root, we have our images. Our whole site has now been pushed to our Raspberry Pi, which is awesome. So we can step over and on our sudo, or on our PuTTY window, we can actually try to run our site now. So again, we kind of did the same thing with the info to check our .NET runtime. It's the same path there and same execution. So we're going to run .NET, and we're going to run it against our folder that we just created. So again, mine is build it with Dan, and then it's going to be the DLL for your site. So mine is build it with Dan.web. So you'll want to replace yours the same, but as soon as we hit enter here to run that, we should see, if you're not using a database, a couple lines that say it's now listening on a specific port. But if I scroll up, we can see here I'm unable to connect to MySQL. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to set up our SQL database, set up our users to do everything so that we can run through here. If you don't have a MySQL database, or you're not running a database at all and it's just static pages, you should see basically what I'll show you after the MySQL step. So feel forward to skip this step. I do have everything tagged out in the video, so just skip the MySQL database setup. If you're still with me here, we're going to go ahead and get started with MySQL. So I'm going to clear this out just so we can see better. And we are going to install MySQL Server. So again, this is going to be a straightforward one. After this is running, we will need to do the installation. So we're just going to hit yes here, allow this to install, and I'll try to speed this up so that we don't have to wait the whole time. Okay, that has been installed. So now that that is installed, the next step is to actually just go through the setup. So we're gonna, set up the MySQL secure installation, and that's just gonna run through you a bunch of different prompts. The first one here is to see if you want to use this password component. I opted not to do that, so I'm going to kind of go through here without using that password. I mean, you still are setting up a password, you're just not using this component. So I'm going to hit no for that one. Again, it's still asking you for a password, so type in whatever password you want. Again. All right, and so this one is, do you want to remove the anonymous user? I've hit yes through the all of the next steps here because I don't need that anonymous user. We will be setting up our own. Disallow root login remotely, that's fine again, because again, we're going to set up users for remote login. So I remove them. Remove the test database. Yeah, not going to use it. I have my own database. And then just reload the privileged tables. Sure, why not? Great, that is it. We did the installation. We are set up. So now we can just do a sudo MySQL. And this will actually run MySQL if you type it in correctly. Sudo MySQL. There we go. We are in MySQL now. So the first thing that we're going to do here is we are going to create our user. So I will paste that in here. I want to note that you always need to have this semicolon. If you don't, it will do something weird. So don't forget your semicolon at the end. But this user is going to be our build it with Dan user on our Raspberry Pi. So we have our IP address here, the @IP address. Again, if you're doing this on your own, you can replace the build it with Dan with your user. And then I do have specified my password here. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my actual password, which I will have blurred out. And once that's good, you can hit enter. So query is okay, we are good. So the next thing that we're going to do then is run our grants. And what this will do is grant our user, which is the same user again, all of the permissions to create, alter, drop, so on and so forth. Great, that worked out fine. So now we're going to create another user, which will be our remote user. This will allow you to install MySQL on your own computer and connect to the database so that if you want to push any scripts, do anything else, you can. And that's actually what I'm going to do so that I can use the MySQL interface, connect to the Pi, and run my database scripts to create my database, push my schema, and insert some data. Again, the IP address here is actually based off of your computer's IP address, and I am still using the same username just to make it easier for myself so that I really only have to remember one user, although they are completely separate. So again, I am going to just change my password and we'll blur that out. Okay, and then again, we will run the same grants for that user. So paste it in there, it ran right away, but you can see it is still that same user. Grants are okay. So the last thing then is we're just gonna flush privileges. It's always good to make sure that we are doing that, and then you can exit as goodbye. How nice. So I'm just going to clear this. We now have the SQL installation set up in our users, but we're not completely done yet. We do want our MySQL to bind correctly to our application. So we're going to go into the MySQL config file. This is a file that already exists, and we're just going to scroll down until we find our bind address and then the MySQLX bind address. All we're doing here are changing this to our server. So this will be the 192.168.1.11, and we will do the same thing here as well. Can't use your numpad. Found that out. All right, once we have this, that is the only updates we're making here. So we can Control X, Y, enter. That has been saved. The last piece is for Firewall. And this is really just for the remote piece of it. We want to allow port 3306. That is the port for MySQL. So we're just going to allow that. And again, you will want to restart after all this has been done. So another systemctl restart MySQL. Awesome. So with that being done, now we can give this another run for our application. So I'm going to grab that same script again. So we're trying to run manually our .NET application. And this is where if you, oh no. Yep, makes sense, guys. I didn't run my scripts yet. So we are not 100% done yet. That is my fault. We are going to open up MySQL now. So now that we have our remote, again, I do have this here. We can see that I have my YouTube version built for my 1.1. So we're going to go ahead and connect to that. So what I'm going to do is I actually already have this script out here. So this is going to allow me to script everything out. It'll create my database. Let's see, why didn't that work? Because, okay, so now I need to grab everything here, copy that. I need to refresh this. Double click on that, add a new file. Now I can run it. It was not running in the context of a database, so I could have scripted that out differently to do, but there we go. Now I have everything created. I have my database. We no longer need MySQL. So when I come back to this step, then we can try it again. So here we go. After running that code again, after setting up our SQL, we can see now we are working. We are listening, and you can see that from this last line. We are listening on that HTTP. This is what that star does. We're listening on all areas. So if I were to, I'll just pull over, drag over a incognito window and 192.168.1.11. Moving that aside, we can see that we are seeing a lot of stuff step through here. And we can see I am running my site, but boy, does that not look right. And that is exactly because it doesn't look like we are accessing any of our CSS and JS. Now, I put a lot of time and looked through this, and I decided not to fix this because as we're running manually from, as we are running manually from our Pi, we're running as the Ubuntu user, and if you recall back, we kind of set up ownership and set everything for the WW user, which is what we're going to use when we're running our site as a service. So this is okay for now. I'm going to close it, and we're going to get going into creating the service. So I'm going to Control C just to stop running our site manually, and I'm going to clear this. So What we're going to be doing now is creating a service that will always be running our .NET application, just like we were manually, but we're going to be running it from a systemd service. So we're going to create a brand new systemd service. And again, build it with Dan here. It can be renamed to whatever you want. So we're going to nano in, and we're going to paste in the entire code that you will need, again, on the website if you want to copy it itself. But here, again, we can see the working directory is our Build It with Dan folder. Description up here can be whatever you want. Your execution start is going to look very familiar because it is the exact same code we were just running to run it manually. Your restart always is so that if your Pi ever restarts, it will run this automatically. And then this was the key here. Our user is the www data user, which has permission to run our entire site. So with this in here, we can Control X, Y, enter again to save that. And then our last piece is to just start this. So we'll do another systemctl start and the service. And if we want, we can also check that service just to make sure that it is up and running. And there we can see it is active. So we'll Control C. And now we will again get a Chrome window over here, and we will retry this. 192.168.1.11. And with that loaded, there we go. We actually have our site up and running. You can see all of my stuff is there now. The CSS is working. We are good. So you can see, like, it didn't take that much time. It can be really simple to get this up and running. I know the FileZilla is a weird part. I'm sure there are better ways to publish your code to your Pi. This is what I'm using. If I do stumble across a better way, I could make a video on it. Or if you already have a better way of doing that, please let me know. I want to make this easier for myself as well. But you can see, this is all I just followed. I followed my own article, right? This is where I was copying everything from and pasting it in. So this is a great spot to go through. It is a complete guide to getting your website with a database up and running from anywhere on your network. So thanks for watching, guys. I do plan on getting another article and video out there of how to allow external traffic from outside your network through your router to access your website. That's exactly what I did for my real website, builditwithdan.com, where you can come out here anywhere you want. And again, this site here that I'm showing you, all running off my Raspberry Pi sitting right here on my desk. So again, thanks for watching. If you guys did like the video, give it a thumbs up. Really appreciate it. If you're looking for that next video on how to open up traffic, go ahead and subscribe so you get notified when that comes out. Otherwise, thanks, and we'll see you next time.